Welcome to a new episode of New Ways of Being. And this one's going to be interesting, a bit different. But before we dive into that, I'd like to say to anyone watching or listening to this episode to, if you get benefit out of this and enjoy it, please subscribe and refer this episode to others in this podcast. So I am calling this episode today, Calling All Gaians and Earthlings Too. What is happening in the world is very interesting because there is concern on the part of many people who are aware of what's happening, that we're coming to a serious tipping point. And it has to do with evolution versus devolution. And I'm calling out Gaians and Earthlings here because we human beings are dominant creatures on this planet, and our future is going to be determined by how we evolve consciously. Our consciousness determines how we operate in the world and whether we have a good world as a result or not. And of course, many people would comment on this that things don't look too good right now. Now, I call out the Gaians and Earthlings bit because there are some people who are aware that the evolution is taking place and unity is taking place in the universe at many different levels, including at the whole level of the universe and definitely here on Earth. And if we appreciate unity on Earth, then and know that life is a driving factor in the whole universe, then we can quickly come to see that Earth is alive and conscious, and therefore the reference to Gaia is was established quite some time ago. I think it was back in the 1960s. And so more people are speaking up and saying we need to take a Gaian point of view to include the Earth as a whole, as well as individual beings. So those who are aware of that and might consider themselves Gaians, I'm referring to those. That's self-determined. Otherwise, Earthlings or human beings would be the case. So that's what this is about. So this tipping point that I mentioned, evolution versus devolution, is coming to the forefront. Many very intelligent observers and commentators have been talking about this for quite some time. Barbara Marx Hubbard was one of those, and there have been many more than that, Phil. Gene Houston has been prominent in talking about this whole issue, and there are many who talk about it today. So when we talk about evolution on Earth, we're talking primarily about evolution of consciousness. Our bodies are probably evolving as well, but our consciousness is critical because it determines how we think, how we behave in the world, and that determines the results that we are creating. And if we are unhappy with what we are creating, and I would say most people, probably well over 90% are very concerned. And that's because we see what's going on in the world with war and conflict and systems uh, just crumbling. Our human systems are breaking down every day, and that is lending to this whole issue. So this is a bit concerning. Um, other people say, okay, well, yeah, I see that this. I think we have some time, and it's a big question mark, though, about how much time we have. And there are think tanks and other organizations that say uh, the way we're going, we will probably have civilization failure within 20 years or 30 or 40 probably at the most. So we need to be concerned. We need to pay attention. And that's what this episode is about. Now, evolution of consciousness, I have come to see, is happening not just here on Earth, but it is happening in the universe as a whole. We Science has helped us to learn so much about the universe, and especially in the last 10 years. There is a very new understanding of the universe on a scientific basis by scientists, particularly um, cosmologists and physicists, but many other scientists as well, have come to realize that the universe is at its core consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental to how the universe works. Now, this is not been long known. It's like I say, it's really less than 10 years, especially in the last 5 years. And Nobel scientists in 2022 earned the Nobel Prize in Physics for understanding this new role of consciousness and the quantum nature of the universe being determined now and proven with solid evidence that it's operating at all scales of the universe, from small to large, not just the quantum, very small scale, but the scale of the universe as a whole. And so we're beginning to see the universe and ourselves in it in a whole new way. And I want to keep cranking here to cover a lot of ground. I'm trying to keep this to be well shorter than an hour, but we'll see. Now, so the scientists now see that consciousness is key and unity is key. They totally understand, and actually have for well more than 100 years, that the universe is one unified entity, but it takes on a new picture when we say that it's a conscious universe and a live universe, not just a material universe. And so it takes on whole new meaning. And, very observant people, scientists are speaking out and saying, hey, this unity is a much bigger key than when we had originally understood. I mean, it has been known for since the very early 1900s. But now, because we're talking about unity of a, in fact, the universe is being called a unified, living, evolving entity. And I pause here because I want you to think what that means. This is important. Now, other things have also been pointing to, are providing additional input into this picture. One is that in some relatively recent books and from many other sources, it's being seen or talked about that humanity is seen as a test case of evolving consciousness, not just for us, but for the whole universe. Because we have evolved to this stage where we're, semi-civilized, we're intelligent, we're self-aware, but we've not stepped up to the next significant level of evolution of full awakening and knowing who we really are and starting to behave in a more evolved way. So humanity is seen as a test case. This was pointed out also in the book Conversations with God, Book 4, Awaken the Species. And God said that, yes, this is, he may have not he or she may not have said it in quite such strong terms, but, commenting that many species have been visiting Earth, sentient species, to observe how we are doing and how we're behaving. And so the level of concern has elevated somewhat. And actually, it's being said that this has been going on for quite some time, not just tens of years, but hundreds or thousands of years. But so that is adding to the situation. And then, well, I've got a project going on that is I'm leading the effort to create a book called "We Can Change the World by Raising Our Consciousness," and in doing so, I'm reaching out to many different knowledgeable people who explore consciousness and who have something to say about our evolution of consciousness and how we can make this more obvious to more people and be able to for them to see that evolving our consciousness is not something that has to take tens and 20 and 30 years or a whole lifetime. We can evolve in a very short time, in a matter of weeks, even if we choose to do so individually. So in the process of reaching out to people to contribute to this book, providing chapters to the book, I spoke with one person that I've known about for a long, long time. His name is Peter Russell. And back in the 1980s or 90s, he put out a book called Waking Up in Time. And at that time, he was concerned if we can manage our technology growth and our growth as beings in time, if we can save the world, because even back then, there were many people saying, you know, climate can be at risk, rapid growth of humanity in terms of numbers of people on the world, and all competing for resources is a concern. So this has been going on for a long time, and that's what his book was about. But in connecting with him and communicating with him about this book, he talked to me about a fairly recent book that he wrote. I think it came out like in 2013, 2017, maybe 2017, called Forgiving Humanity. And in it, he was looking at our rate of technological development and our rate of innovation, and how that is far outpacing our development of consciousness and morality and attention to ourselves and the world, and to being, an evolved moral species. And he, in looking at that, he said that, technological development is growing and has been for a long time at an exponential rate, and it is accelerating. And he is predicting that that is going to exceed our ability to make a difference, and that we will destroy our civilization and perhaps the whole world and life on it much sooner than we would like to admit. And I don't recall if he put a date to it, but that really got me thinking. We have some smart people that are saying our problem is serious, and Peter Russell happened to believe that we could not evolve ourselves and evolve, in consciousness in time. Now, I'm taking a somewhat more optimistic view. I've really explored into it, and I believe we can, because under the covers, our evolution of consciousness is happening, and it can indeed happen at a very fast and, in fact, exponential rate as well. But tipping point is there. I mean, we can succeed if we pay attention and become aware. By the way, becoming aware is what evolving consciously is: becoming more aware, evolving our awareness to higher levels and higher levels. So we can, if we spread the word and if we dive in and get serious about this, we can change our human consciousness and change the world as a result, and in time. But if we fail to do that, then in all likelihood, our future looks pretty grim. So that's what this is about. That's why I'm saying we need to call all Gaians, to attention. Take a look at this, learn what this is about, and humans. If you don't believe in Gaia, we need to get the majority of humanity understanding this at some level. So let me cover some quick ground here. Just a summary. The basic problem today is that our human consciousness is based in the belief in separation instead of unity, which now we know that the universe is one unified whole. And because we believe in separation, then we are driven by ego, which is mental programming, and fear. And so that creates all the problems that we have in the world. You've heard me talk about this before, but all of the problems. One of the problems, though, that I really haven't talked about is that separation is also, and our technology changes has also been increasing a lack of community. Back in our past, we were very community-driven people. We lived in communities. We interacted with our local community. And now, if you look at, like teenagers and all of their issues with loneliness and mental illness, and all of that's primarily from lack of community. We've become more and more isolated, even though we have these networking technologies and Zoom that we can meet together. That doesn't mean that we will. And so if we're not driven to build community, it won't happen for us. So that's compounding the problem. That's actually, it's driving that as a survival issue for teenagers, like I say, and why death by suicide is skyrocketing. So we've got massive problems all across the board. Now, I want to point out something important here. We can change that by shifting to unity and love. Unity and love fully embraced and embodied in our beings. That means evolving our consciousness and embodying that love and consciousness and unity in our very self, the way we be in the world. That would be the kind of conscious evolution that we need. Now, one very important statement that was made quite a long time ago by Albert Einstein, he said, our problems, and in fact, all problems cannot be solved at the level at which they were created, the level of consciousness at which they were created. They must be solved from a higher level of consciousness. We must become more aware, have a higher perspective, a more evolved perspective in order to be able to solve the problems. And so that quote from Einstein is very important. And he was saying way back then, in I forget the year, but I'm inclined to say the 1970s or 80s. He said, we have to evolve consciously because problems can't be solved at the level at which they were created. So unity and consciousness, greater awareness is the answer. And by the way, consciousness can be kind of a confusing thing. And here's a definition of consciousness that I got from Chat GPT, because I was looking. I've defined it in different ways over the years, last 20 years. But I wanted a kind of a more concise and holistic perspective. And this is the definition that I got. And I asked the question in a very specific way. You might not get the same thing, but It said consciousness is the dynamic, multifaceted awareness through which an individual experiences existence, encompassing perception, thought, emotion, self reflection, and awareness. It is not only the capacity to be aware of the internal and external world, but also to find meaning and connection within it. So we must become more aware of the evolution of consciousness, our individual evolution, and our collective evolution. And we must become more aware of unity and what that means. And so, unity, as I said earlier, is operating because the whole universe is originating out of consciousness. It is alive. Consciousness and life go hand in hand. And so we can look at unity at many different levels. We can look at it from a personal level. We can look at it from the level of our whole human species. We can look at it from the level of Gaia, including the earth itself, which is our home, because right now we're in the process of destroying our home because we're not aware of what we're doing. We need to become more aware and become stewards of our planet and Gaia, help Gaia handle all of the problems that we're throwing at it, pollution of many different kinds. We've got climate change, regardless of whether it's human caused or due to cycles of the Earth's rotation through the universe. We've got our whole galaxy evolves and our whole universe evolves. And in fact, I now know that there is something that should be called the cosmos that is beyond what we think of as the universe today. I'm not going to go into all that right now. But so our new scientific understanding can help us understand this and begin to change as a result. There are spiritual teachings that help us, like the Vedantic traditions from in India over thousands of years. They really came to understand the role of consciousness incredibly well. But so we're beginning to, and also there's now more of there's studies of consciousness now that have been happening for quite some time. The Institute of Noetic Scientists, I think, was started by a NASA astronaut back in fact, it was immediately after men landed on the moon that was formed. And so studies have been going on by many spiritual people, studies of consciousness itself by various kinds of scientists of many different types, and many other types of sciences have gotten involved as well. Certainly biology, cellular science, energy, physics, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this can help us relate to learning more quickly about unity. And also, we've known from a spiritual perspective in particular that love has an important role to play. In fact, for a very long time, I and others have seen love as a universal force, and it is the force that unifies the universe or helps unify the universe. And so um, love should properly be seen as part of the answer. And unity at the level of Gaia, of course, there are many different organizations and many people, indigenous peoples have always been oriented to understanding the unity and the life force of certainly the planet and to some degree the universe. So we need to learn from them, and there are definitely people who are helping that process happen. Gene Houston was a big one who studied um, indigenous peoples and uh, did a lot to talk about human potential from that perspective of a more unified perspective. Now, one of the people who has been influencing me in the last 2 years is Jude Currivan, and she is a cosmologist who has been leading or a leading scientist in all of the new understanding. But she also has been she has a degree in quantum physics and a degree in cosmology. She got a degree in cosmological archaeology, and that involves studying indigenous peoples quite extensively. And so she kind of sees it from both sides and has a very broad perspective. And I really respect what she has to say on this subject. So when we come back to this point of coming to this tipping point and our risk of failing as a civilization, um, individual and collective evolution of consciousness to include the understanding of unity and a unified perspective of how that consciousness must evolve is a key part of that. Now, I'll point out that there are a number of organizations that are answering the call and really beginning to be very active in helping the world understand what's happening and the need to evolve consciousness and how to do it. There's an organization that I've been part of since, there we go, 2018, I guess it was, called Humanities Team. And they are really doing as much as any organization or more than any other organization to promote the evolution of consciousness. They talk about, helping people see that we have to live more consciously. It's saying the same thing, but when we understand that evolution is happening on the level of the universe and not just humanity or animal species, then it helps to see the bigger picture. And they are doing everything they can. They're doing a lot educationally by providing programs of many different types, spiritual, science-based, humanity-based, many different levels. And they have something called Humanity Stream Plus, that offers those programs, and you can sign up for that streaming service and go in and select whatever educational programs you would like to see. And they're most, I think, most all of them are video based. There may be some that are audio based, but video, I think. And Jude Curvin has one out there called Our Conscious Revolution. She called it Our Conscious Revolution. So emphasizing evolution, but the fact that it's now at a radical level and therefore revolutionary and needs to be impacting humanity as a revolution, big, fast change. There are other organizations. By the way, I saw that Our Conscious Revolution program. It was 16 modules, and it was excellent, absolutely excellent, and covers a whole perspective of the scientific aspect, the consciousness aspect, the indigenous species aspect, and mythology, and how, understanding some universal principles out of mythology, and the sage and the seer and the shaman, how knowing something about those things can help us understand how we can operate differently. So, and how we can change. And she also argues for a strong understanding of our species and world as a part of Gaia. And so she covers that. But there are other organizations out there. There's something called Evolutionary Circle, and that it's an organization of about, let me say 300, I think it's over 300, but evolutionary leaders in the world. Deepak Chopra, just there are so many people. Jude Curvin is in the Evolutionary Circle. Many, many different people from many different backgrounds, and they are helping to lead the way. They are evolutionary leaders. It's called Evolutionary Leaders Circle. There's an organization called Unity Earth, and it works a lot with indigenous leaders, but many other people who are concerned about unity and the health of the earth and Gaia. So they are very involved with that. Jude Curvin was a co-founder of an organization called Whole World View. It's wholeworld-view.org, and they are doing things to help promote the whole world view. Unity at a whole world level. And there are actually many, many others who are involved. So I want you to start thinking about this, everything that I've said. I put this together, this has been pretty much very ad hoc. I decided to do this last night. I roughed out an outline, but I've been just talking on the fly here, so I've had a little more stumbling of over my own words than I would like. But I hope that the message has come through, that understanding that we must evolve in consciousness, and as a part of that, in the unity of our species, and of how we are a part of a much greater unity of the world and the galaxy and the whole universe. So I hope you've gotten enough understanding from this that it will set you to looking for more information. I've talked about parts of this in the past over, in different episodes. I will be probably talking about this in some new ways going forward in new episodes, and also um, I fully intend to help make a book come together of some very uh, expert, knowledgeable people who have explored consciousness and unity for long periods of time, and who can help people understand this. So I'm hoping that we bring this book together, and it becomes a resource uh, as well. So take this to heart. Start really paying attention to what is happening in the area of consciousness and unity, and Godspeed in doing so. And you have a great day and a great life.